This is the 2.0 version of a series of posts that I wrote in the winter of 2009 and 2010. Now that we've discussed Dumbledore's handling of Snape's first steps away from Voldemort, let's take a look at the first part of the dialogue that seals the deal. In part 2, we heard that the boy lives and has Lily's eyes. After Snape's anguished reply that Lily is gone, dead, the dialogue continues. Is this remorse, Severus? I wish I were dead. And what use would that be to anyone? Said Dumbledore coldly. There is naturally endless commentary on this scene, but let's talk about the scene itself first. Dumbledore, as we saw in part 2, prods Snape with Lily's eyes to put a human face on this child that Snape regards only as the thing that lived when Lily died. Despite Dumbledore's efforts, Snape cannot see through to the child who carries Lily's eyes forward in life. He can reach only the materialist's narrow, literal perspective that Lily's own eyes are now gone, dead. Snape's deeply emotional response, though, opens the door to Dumbledore's next question. Is this remorse, Severus? Again, raising the stakes. Remorse, as we surely know if we have read Deathly Hallows, opens up the possibility of redemption. Harry charitably gives Voldemort the opportunity to try for some remorse before his fatal final duel. Because remorse, or a sense of guilt for the wrongs one has done, is the one thing that can keep Voldemort from damnation. And apparently seeing the unwanted piece of Voldemort's damned soul in King's Cross makes Harry actually care about Voldemort's redemption. When Dumbledore asks Snape if he feels remorse, he essentially asks if he understands and feels the wrong he has done. It's an important question because Snape did not approach Dumbledore out of remorse. He approached him out of fear, and only because his actions had created a grave threat for the woman he loves. Now that Snape's fears have been realized and Dumbledore's protection proved fallible, Snape's initial anything is no longer binding. He can continue the spiritual suicide he began when he became a Death Eater, or he can try for some remorse. Is this remorse is ultimately a question about the state of Snape's soul. Snape's wish for death is clearly a sign of remorse, but the wrong kind of remorse. It is self-pitying, inwardly focused, suicidal remorse. It is the absence of all hope, the remorse of Judas, who threw back the 30 pieces of silver, then went and hung himself. J.K. Rowling often places the Harry Potter series within a Christian framework, most obviously in making Harry a sort of sacrificial Christ figure. Here, she places the conversation within the ancient Christian understanding of despair. 5th century St. John Cassian writes in Book 9 of the Institutes that despair produces in the guilty soul no amendment of life or correction of faults, and that destructive despair led to Cain's failure to repent after the murder of his brother and Judas's failure to relieve himself by making amends. 7th century Saint Isidore of Seville goes even further when he writes in Book 4 of De Sumo Bono that to commit a crime is to kill the soul, but to despair is to fall into hell. Much has been made of the coldness of Dumbledore's reply, but the coldness is actually a measured response to what Snape has just revealed. Snape has moved from intense grief to despair, and Dumbledore tries to bring him back from despair to a sense of purpose. He refuses to let Snape wallow in suicidal self-pity and begins to deliver the message that Snape can amend his life, that Snape's life can still have value and worth. All is not hopeless. Much has also been made naturally of Dumbledore's "what use would your death be to anyone?" Is Dumbledore, as some propose, thinking only of how he can use Snape and how Snape can be useful to him? Or is he perhaps saying that death would not be of any use to Snape himself? If Snape dies now, he would have lived a short, pathetic life with no chance to offset the wrong he has done. And if he dies from suicidal despair, he will have no chance for redemption in this life. Dying now would truly be of no use to anyone, least of all to Severus Snape.